I mean, if you look at some of these exit polls, I mean, I live in Virginia. Immigration was the number one issue. I mean, again, these could change in Virginia.
Well, Virginia does have a border with West Virginia. Very, very contested area.
Build the wall. Like, what?
It's a completely selfish, unpatriotic, un-American, narcissistic way of looking at politics, but that's their perspective. On MSNBC, as these results were coming in, they had a righteous, all liberal female panel of observers. You had Jen Psaki, you had Reid, you had Rachel Maddow, and you had Nicole Wallace, all telling you exactly what was going on here in the Super Tuesday primaries. And there was a moment when Jen Psaki, who, by the way, just up until about a minute and a half ago, was collecting a paycheck from you. You paid her salary as the spokesperson for the White House. And she was analyzing the exit polls in Virginia. And she noticed something about the number one issue for Virginians when voting in the Republican primary. Take a watch.
I mean, if you look at some of these exit polls, I mean, I live in Virginia. Immigration was the number one issue. I mean, again, these could change in Virginia.
Well, Virginia does have a border with West Virginia. Very, very contested area.
Build the wall. Like, what? I mean, if you look.
By the way, sorry, Alex Wagner, forgot you were on the panel too, but let's face it, you didn't have much to say. They're laughing. They're mocking. They're shocked that Virginians or anyone cares about immigration or border security, and certainly people who live 1,000 miles away from the border. It's amazing how the people who are paid to deliver news to you, the American people, aren't actually up to speed on the news. Or they're well aware of the fact that Americans are concerned about immigration on the border because of security, because of the financial impacts, because of the strain on our social systems that have been set up for American citizens, and yes, because of crime and the heinous violent crime that many Americans are suffering from at the hands of people who are completely unvetted in this country illegally and shouldn't be in this country illegally. They could very well be aware of that, but their contempt for you, their disgust for you overrides the facts at hand. Jen Psaki says that she lives in Virginia. Well, our colleague Katie Pavlich at Town Hall points out that just this week, MS-13 gang members were sentenced for kidnapping and murdering 2 young people. The gang members restrained, attacked, and killed them, stabbing and chopping him more than 100 times with knives, a machete, and a pickaxe. Afterwards, the gang broke one of the young man's legs so his body would fit into a pre-dug hole. Just last week, a young girl was kidnapped and murdered by an illegal immigrant. And by the way, Laken Riley, her murder happened in Georgia, also not on the border. But no, let's joke about the fact that Virginia has a border with West Virginia. This is less about their ignorance as it is about their hatred for you. They hold you in such low esteem. And they literally don't know what's going on with voters. Why should you care about the border? But actually, it got even worse on MSNBC. Here's our friend Reid breaking down the way Republicans voted.
They're voting on race. They're voting on this idea of an invasion of brown people over the border. The idea that they can't get whatever job they want. A black person got it, therefore drive all the blacks out of the colleges, get rid of DEI. That is what they're voting on. They're just voting specifically on racial animus at this stage. It isn't about economics.
I gotta pause here. I know, and we'll play the rest of the clip. But this shot is so important here. This tells you everything you need to know about the way news is delivered to you now on cable news and on places owned by NBC News and Universal Comcast. Who here on this panel will be able to say to Reid, well, actually, speaking as a Republican, the issues, the way you describe them, are not exactly how we think and how we believe. And I'm sure that there are some Republican viewers out there that would like to hear their point of view and their perspective articulated, right? Not even the one token. Over on CNN, you got your token. And let's face it, over on MSNBC, or excuse me, on Fox News, oftentimes you'll get your Jessica Tarlov or your Geraldo Rivera right? Or you used to have your Bob Beckel, may he rest in peace, or his or the Juan Williams, right? I mean, good Lord. There's a guy, Simon Rosenberg. There's five liberals right now that are regular contributors to Fox News that are on the payroll who are constantly sitting there saying, just so you know, over on ABC News, who do you have? You have Bill Kristol. Bill Kristol. And on CNN, you get Jonah Goldberg. But look at that panel. Look at there, and there's no one in the production offices. There's no producer. There's no one in the control room. You know who actually is sitting here watching this? Because I've done TV hits in the past on MSNBC. They don't invite me back anymore. But I will tell you, I will guarantee it, in fact. Do you know who's in this room right here who is rolling their eyes and thinking, Joy Reid is a moron and a racist one at that? You know who's doing it? The cameraman. The cameraman, the sound guy. And by the way, half of the ladies in the hair and makeup room also. They're laughing at this. They find this just contemptible. All right. We'll let Joy Reid go back on her racist rant against you MAGA fascist racists.
Economic.
No, which is why Trump killed the immigration bill.
Correct.
That's why. And because otherwise he can't run against the other and brown people and people who don't look like him, like his supporters, his base of supporters coming across the border and scaring people and killing people or whatever he's threatening out there. I mean, if you look at some of these exit polls, I mean, I live in Virginia. Immigration was the number one issue.
Yeah.
I mean, again, these could change in Virginia.
Well, Virginia does have a border with West Virginia. Very, very contested area. Build a wall.
Like, what? I mean, when I was in New Hampshire, people were talking about the northern border as a threat. Because Trump has indoctrinated people with this fear of people who do not look like them being a threat to them.
But as you know, I mean, in every election cycle, particularly when there's a Democratic incumbent, we get reminded about the borders. And the borders become a thing again. And then if there's a Republican in office, we don't think about them anymore. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the deficit and the border. Like you make these things an issue. You make them into boogeymen. You make them into something that grabs you from under the bed at night as soon as you wake up. As long as there's a Democratic incumbent to blame on it, you make sure that nothing's ever done to fix either. And then you hope that people stop talking about them once you've got a Republican in office.
All right, so let's unpack that now that you've seen the entire clip, including Jen Psaki's glorious dissertation on Virginians who actually think that there might be a problem with having a completely wide open border and over 10 million people crossing illegally, completely unvetted, who then end up committing violent crimes in our neighborhoods. Let's unpack this a little bit, shall we? First of all, major insight into not only how they view you with contempt, but also their own narcissistic perspective on politics. Let's unpack really what they're saying here. Why should Virginians care about the border? They don't live on the border, so it doesn't affect them, right? I mean, it doesn't even cross their minds that Virginians could actually have compassion for their fellow Americans, Texans, Arizonans who live on the border and have to deal with this, even Californians. It doesn't even cross their minds that you don't have to be directly affected by a horrible policy that a president has unilaterally implemented to actually say, wait a second, that's wrong. And that needs to be fixed. And he doesn't deserve to be president because he's done this to this country. You see, for them, it's like, Virginia doesn't have a border, so why do they care? Because that's how they view politics, you see. Their perspective on politics is we need to go out and do things and give out hands out. And we got to give out free money and free benefits and free things so that people know that they need the government to provide those things. And then they'll support us and keep voting for us because that's why people vote a certain way. It's a completely selfish, unpatriotic, un-American, narcissistic way of looking at politics, but that's their perspective. It doesn't even occur to them that somebody who isn't directly affected by the border crisis that Biden has created might actually want to say, no, that's wrong. Let's fix it. And then Jen Psaki or Rachel Maddow would say, well, how is it directly affecting you negatively? And of course, the appropriate answer is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Right is right and wrong is wrong. And the law is the law. And our borders are our borders. It doesn't have to directly affect me for me to be passionate about it. Fascinating, isn't it? when you think about it through that perspective. This is how they view politics. And to Rachel Maddow's old trope here that, it doesn't matter if a Democrat's in the White House, they bring this out and they keep talking about it. No, I'm pretty sure Donald Trump was talking about the border all through his presidency and certainly during his reelection campaign, because he was wanting to finish that wall and finish building the wall and protecting that border. I'm pretty sure during George W. Bush's presidency, we talked about protecting the border for national security concerns, actually. And he was criticized by his own voters for not doing more on the border. I remember that vividly, in fact. This has absolutely nothing to do with party politics. And by the way, Rachel Maddow, this isn't a pretend issue. Literally, Joe Biden has broken whatever semblance of order and law enforcement we had on our southern border over the last 3 years. The American people are not stupid. They know that this isn't invented. This isn't make-believe. We've seen plenty. In fact, last I checked, Joe Biden's latest talking point is that we have a crisis at the border, right? Isn't Joe Biden saying that all the time now when they're blaming Republicans for not passing their bill in the Senate that would have actually made things worse? But clearly, Rachel Maddow, clearly Jen Psaki, clearly Joy Reid, this is not a invented issue. It's not make-believe. If now even Joe Biden has added to his talking points, yes, we have a very bad border crisis. Joe Biden, by the way, Joy Reid, not done with her ridiculous, outrageous, offensive, racist comments. She had more.
These things were perfect. You had one crisis, bruh. It was called the pandemic. And you know what you did? You bollocksed it completely. You did so poorly at managing your sole crisis. The one hard thing you do, the reason he doesn't look old like Biden looks older, the presidency ages you when you do the job. Obama went gray because he was doing the work. Donald Trump looks the same as when he ran because he was playing golf the whole time. His one job
you think
was
that
to
hair
manage.
color's natural?
That too. But the reality is he had one job, manage this crisis. And he messed it up so badly that they had to do the stimmy. People love the stimmy. Why did they have to do the stimmy? Because 1 million bodies are in the ground.
It was
because
Democrats.
of how poorly he managed an airborne virus.
He managed an airborne virus poorly by listening to the Democrat plant Anthony Fauci in the White House. And that was a mistake. He shouldn't have given Fauci so much power. I don't think you should raise a fake hair color issue with Joy Reid. That's a bit of a faux pas, right? Considering she literally has a Donald Trump hairdo herself. But now we've got the answer to the question, why does Joe Biden look so old and so decrepit and so broken down and so incapable of doing his job? He's only 3 years older than Donald Trump. Well, now we know the answer because he's had to deal with so many crises and Donald Trump didn't.